It happened, as he was alone praying, that his disciples joined him, and he asked them, saying, Who do the crowds say that I am? So they answered and said, John the Baptist. But some say Elijah, and others say that one of the old prophets has risen again. And he said to them, But who do you say that I am? Peter answered, The Christ of God. And Jesus strictly warned and commanded them to tell this to no one, saying, The Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and chief priests and scribes, and be killed, and be raised the third day. Then he said to them all, If anyone desires to come after me, let him deny himself, and take up his cross daily, and follow me. For whoever desires to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will save it. For what profit is it to a man if he gains the whole world, and is himself destroyed or lost? For whoever is ashamed of me and my words, of him the Son of Man will be ashamed when he comes in his own glory, and in his Father's, and of the holy angels. But I tell you truly, there are some standing here who shall not taste death till they see the kingdom of God. Now it came to pass about 8 days after these sayings, that he took Peter, John, and James, and went up on the mountain to pray. As he prayed, the appearance of his face was altered, and his robe became white and glistening. And behold, 2 men talked with him, who were Moses and Elijah, who appeared in glory, and spoke of his decease, which he was about to accomplish in Jerusalem. But Peter and those with him were heavy with sleep. And when they were fully awake, they saw his glory, and the 2 men who stood with him. A cloud came and overshadowed them, and they were fearful as they entered the cloud. And a voice came out of the cloud, saying, This is my beloved Son. Hear him. When the voice had ceased, Jesus was found alone. My name's Arthur. Thank you for joining me as we share these verses from Luke chapter 9, verse 18 to 36. Jesus has more or less finished his public ministry. It's at a stage where many in the crowds like him, but opposition is building. Last time we read of the feeding of the 5,000, where Jesus again was teaching about the kingdom of God. And John tells us that some then sought to make him king. So he had dismissed the crowd and sent his disciples away, and he'd gone on the mountain to pray. Now Luke takes us a little bit further forward as Jesus is travelling again, and again he is alone praying. And as John the Baptist has been killed, executed, so the day draws near when he himself will be executed. When his disciples join him, he asks them, Who do the crowds say that I am? Many people had many different opinions of Jesus. Most of them, as Luke has already told us, consider that he is a prophet, one or other of the prophets, possibly a prophet of old resurrected. And within that classification, the most popular choice was John the Baptist, risen from the dead. Some were saying Elijah, and others were naming other of the old prophets. But all of them were saying, risen again, come back, as Jesus proclaims the kingdom of heaven. But as he is evidently not the king, because there is no army behind him, the angels don't seem to be around him, he is not throwing off the Romans, he is not aligned with the authorities of Israel. So evidently Jesus himself is not the Messiah, but he is speaking very powerfully for God. He must be a prophet, and a very powerful prophet and significant prophet. And the mention of Elijah comes because the closing verses of the Old Testament say that Elijah will come before the Messiah. Jesus says, well, that's their opinion. What do you think? And Peter comes with the answer, the Christ of God. We're familiar with the title Christ, but it simply means the one that God has anointed to be the King of Israel and the King of the world, to be the Messiah. And in time he will be exalted and glorified, but he is the person that God has chosen. This is Peter's conclusion. And Jesus says, well, don't tell anybody about this. He strictly warned and commanded them, tell it to no one, because God's plan did not involve Jesus being proclaimed king immediately. Rather, the plan was that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and chief priests and scribes and be killed and be raised the third day. He was not a prophet raised from the dead. He would have to die and be raised from the dead. This was what Jesus was saying. He was the Son of Man, a title he often used of himself, but which points to the Messiah in Daniel's prophecy, chapter 7, where Daniel saw one like the Son of Man coming to the Ancient of Days and being declared the King. And so Jesus is clearly identifying himself with as the Messiah and affirming that he is the Messiah, but saying that first he must be rejected by the leaders of the nation, that is the elders, the chief priests, and the scribes. The Pharisees and the Sadducees will be joined together to execute Jesus, but he will rise the third day. Jesus then goes on to say they have to have this same attitude. If anyone desires to come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. Don't be grasping after position for yourself, but rather be prepared to die every day, just as I am prepared to die. For whoever desires to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will save it. Notice that in these sayings of blessing, Jesus frequently uses the expression, for my sake. There is no blessing in suffering itself, but there is blessing in suffering for Jesus' sake. And a very profound statement, what profit is it to a man if he gains the whole world and is himself destroyed or lost? The point about material possessions is that they are all doomed to destruction. This world will be completely destroyed. So if God gives you a mansion now, then it's a very temporary gift. You might see it as a blessing, but it is just something that God gives you an opportunity to use for his glory. And if you don't use it for his glory, then it is of no value to you whatsoever. For whoever is ashamed of me and my words, of him the Son of Man will be ashamed when he comes in his own glory and in his Father's and of the holy angels. The day will come when the Son of Man will return in power and glory, his own glory, the glory of the Father, and with the mighty holy angels adding to his glory. He will come in power and great honor. And then he says, I tell you truly, there are some standing here who shall not taste death till they see the kingdom of God. He immediately goes on to describe the transfiguration, where Peter, James, and John will see Jesus in his glory. They will have a sneak preview of the glory of God. And Peter would remember that for the rest of his ministry. And John, at the end of his ministry, will have an even greater revelation of these things. And he has recorded them for us in the book of Revelation. So Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God. He is the one appointed by God to rule the world. But he has not taken up his reign yet. First, he would be killed and raised again. And then people must make up their minds about him. Who is Jesus? Who do you say that I am? And those who confess him before men will be confessed before the Father. And those who is ashamed of him before men, he will be ashamed of them when he comes in his glory.